Before I begin, I want to say I love the ReZero anime. But this thing right here, well, this is trash. Compared to other visual novels in this video that I consider to be trash, this one actually has some things going for it. For instance, it does not have a large portion of it just being a poorly done adaptation of the content in the anime. It has pretty good artwork, the voice acting is really good, and the premise isn't that boring. The problem? Well, the writing sucks ass. Now, I guess before I go more into this, I should do a general explanation of the main plot of this visual novel. Well, it starts off with a beauty contest where all of the royal candidates enter because the reward is a meteor that gives good luck, and should help them have a higher chance of becoming the ruler in the future. Now, most of this visual novel takes place during the different days of the competition, where there are new challenges for the girls each day. Things like a swimsuit competition, a quiz, and just other random shit they could think up. These days are drawn out by long, boring conversations between Subaru and the different girls. The problem here is that most of the depth of the characters have just been removed, leaving them an empty husk of their original, as well as a lot of things just being mentioned over and over again. I get that the author of this visual novel thinks that Felt being annoyed at Reinhardt is some super important trait for some reason, but can you please not have hours of her just bitching about Reinhardt without actually using it for the story? Anyways, then there is the story aspect. Well, this also sucks ass. There are so many things that are just so poorly written and make so little sense, where you just most of the time need to imagine the characters being pretty much retarded and extremely easily influenced for these events to make any semblance of sense. One example is when Subaru cheats on a quiz by changing the questions to help Felt not get embarrassed by her lack of knowledge. And this also makes Amelia win. This happens after he's suddenly made the host of the quiz by Roswell since the original host couldn't make it. And none of the other girls expects a damn thing, even though it's made so obvious that everyone should have known that he was changing the questions based on what was going on. And this is just one example of so many just stupid things that you have to try to overlook about this visual novel that just don't make any sense and just aren't really fun. Now, to end this up, we have some Konosuba. Konosuba Kono Yokubukai Game ni Shinpan no begins with Kasuma picking up a ring during an explosion trip with Megaman. Kasuma ends up putting it on at some point by accident, and it turns out that this ring is cursed and can't be taken off. And it also teleports pants from nearby girls to the wielder once every month. Vanner is capable of removing this ring and the curse, but he requires a high price for it. So Kasuma and his party has to manage to find a way to get enough money to get this curse lifted. Now, after the initial setup, the visual novel is structured into different months, where during 1 month, Kasuma and his party tries a new way of getting money, and well, spoiler, fails. At the end of the month, there is the Pantsu Saibun, which is basically put up as a trial where Kasuma tries to deduce whose panties he's ended up getting. I've not read Phoenix Wright, but I'm pretty sure it's a parody of it. The reason for this Pantusaiban is that Kasuma refuses to give the panties back before he knows that he returned it to the right person, and he refuses to just let the person he stole the pants from take it back in secret. If you fail to choose the right clues to prove whose panties Kasuma got, you get a punishment scene, where you choose one of the heroines to punish Kazuma, and then you get a game over. If you manage to get it correctly, you get a reward scene where you pick one of the heroines to give him this reward. As for the general comedy in this visual novel, I would say it's overall pretty good. While not as hilarious as the anime, I think it still did a pretty good job with the character interactions and making a very Konosuba like setup and managing to use the characters quite well to justify some absurdity. One kind of annoying problem, though, is that large parts of this visual novel is not voice acted. Voice acting is used for the introduction, the Pansu Saiban, the punishment and reward scenes, as well as some short character routes at the end, but they're absent during the main bulk of the common route, where the party is trying to gain money. I would consider the voice acting quite important for Konosuba, as the voice actors generally really enhances the comedy, and without them it just doesn't feel the same. And so having long stretches of text without any voice acting is quite annoying. But yeah, in general, I think it's a fairly good visual novel, but it isn't quite on the same level as the anime. The lack of full voice acting, though, is quite annoying, so if it had full voice acting, I think it would be a fair bit better. Oh, you thought I was done? No, there's still more Konosuba. Another Konosuba visual novel, another odd curse. This time it's a curse tablet, which if you give it certain ingredients, it will make clothes. The tablet causes the girls to have their personalities changed. Darkness becoming sadistic, Megumin proudly campaigning for the superiority of small boobs, and being happy every time she's called a lolly, and Aqua actually acting like a goddess. This doesn't happen all at once though, so each character gets their curse at different parts of the story. To solve this, they need to wear a certain piece of clothes, which will revert them back to normal. Now, this visual novel actually fixes the main problem of the previous one by actually having full voice acting. But you can't just solve some problems without introducing some new ones. You know, you have to make up for the increased budget for voice acting in some way. Well, they chose to save money by removing text. For some odd reason, they made this really huge ass text box and then decided to barely use any of it. The text here is not only kind of small, but it's often incomplete with sentences missing. They're voiced, but you can't read them. Now, it's not just that there are some complete sentences that have been cut, but there are also a lot of sentences where they just cut it at some random point. One time, I remember seeing only Ka of Kazuma, and the rest of his name was just cut. Now, this isn't detrimental to the enjoyment of the visual novel, it's just something that kind of makes me ask why. Like, what's the point? Now, for things actually detrimental to the experience, once again there is gameplay. Now, to advance to the next chapter, you need to make clothes to cure one of the girls, as well as make clothes for a random rich guy, which I won't really bother explaining this part of the story. Then to get into the different routes, you need a certain amount of affection with the characters. For the main heroines, Aqua, Darkness, and Megumin, you need a fair amount, and for all of the other ones, you need it to be maxed out. If you only get like 95%, well, no route for you. Also, Aqua, Darkness, and Megumin has a normal end and a good end. If you pick the right choices all of the time before the route starts, well, then you get locked to the good end and you can't get the normal end. But if you aim a bit lower, then you can get the normal end, and you can use the choices during the route to get a good end as well. So you need to aim for close to perfection with the main girls, while aiming for perfection for the sub ones. it makes a lot of sense. Now, to get these affection points, you need to choose their events and pick the right ones out of 3 choices. If you fail to do this even once for the subheroines, well, fuck you. Then there is this annoying part where you need to make clothes for them. So the thing here is that many of these clothes require specific material, which you can only get from a certain work. A lot of these work things needs to be unlocked by having made another piece of clothes. Now the work things, well, it says what you need to unlock them. The problem, however, is it doesn't say what it actually gives, so you're going to have to blindly try and figure this out by unlocking all of them. Now, even if you know what it gives, there's a bit of a challenge in that you are required to often go through chains of maybe 4 or 5 clothes to actually get what you want. This is because you need specific materials to make these clothes, and well, to get that you need to unlock a certain work thing, and you need specific materials to make the thing to unlock that work thing from another work thing that you've unlocked with special material that you've needed to get from another thing you've unlocked. So you have these long chains. And there's also this stupid RNG system for your rewards from these quests and the work things, where you might get unlucky and get 0 things, or you might get lucky and you might get like 10 things. Also, all events needs to be spammed a shit ton of times because there's a chance to trigger an event which can include a CG. If it weren't for these problems, I would say it would kind of be a nice visual novel. But it's really annoying when poorly made gameplay mechanics ends up just padding out your time and really just making the visual novel a lot less enjoyable. So yeah, I think this exemplifies pretty well one of my major problems with these types of visual novels, which is that they introduce this stupid gameplay to try to justify it being a $60 game.